How you doing, folks? Back here at Cape Ann today, we are joined by Les Bartlett. He is a Cape Ann historian, a man of many talents. How you doing, Les?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with the two of you and Studio 16 Cape Ann today.
Yeah. Well, Les, we have some big news here, right? Now, a new book is out.
Yeah, it is the Rockport Art Association and Museum celebrated its 100th year on July 24th, 1921 to 2021. And in January of this year, I was contacted to compile and edit and write their history. So they didn't give me 100 years. They didn't give me, they gave me 5 months. But the great thing about it is I worked with the executive director, Jim Craig, and we met every Tuesday to Zoom beginning from January through June, without exception, from 2 to 3 hours, talking and planning. I have to scratch here, let's edit that out. So we met to really talk our way through, because one of the things that was very much on the RAA's mind was to present from their permanent museum collection of over 600 paintings, about 20 paintings that they felt were important, and they sent the paintings out to essayists from the different museums and in the region to write essays on the paintings. So that became a really kind of simple backbone, although the essayist wrote had no idea what it was going to look like or where it was going to appear. So there was a lot of push and tug and adjustments to those. Around that, Jim Craig wrote 3 essays on art approaching Rockport, art coming to Rockport, and art settling into Rockport. Because there were certain, as with any organization, there are highlights, there are lowlights, there are places where the elbows have been scraped. And for the RAA, there were 2 very big areas where their elbows and knees got scraped. One was around the whole concept of modern painting, which kind of flew in the face of the Cape Ann School of Painting. And then the schism between the painters and the photographers that took place really beginning in the 70s and kind of created a shudder throughout people. So I had to deal with how to handle these things and demonstrate an organization that lasted 100 years and was resilient, and yet also refused to recognize certain things that had been embraced. So it was actually a lot of fun. And go ahead.
I have 2 questions, Les. You know, I'm like dying to jump into this conversation. So first of all, how would you describe the Cape Ann School of Art or Painting?
Completely imaginary, illusory, and invented. All right. I'm very much, that's got Corey's eyes rolling, I can. Yeah. So, the Smithsonian in 2003 mounted a huge exhibit called Picturing New England. And it dealt with, after the Civil War, the need to reaffirm patriotism, to reaffirm America's standfastness and persevering in this great time of schism. And what came out of it was a school of painters, not necessarily just living in New England, but who looked at New England and colonialism as a way of being able to build up these themes of the patriotic. And one of the very big elements was coastal New England. And how could the daily life of the farmer and the fisherman be embraced and idealized and made into a commodity that people wanted to share? So it's always been a case to me that it's a great way to open the conversation to say, well, the School of Cape Ann was a complete invention. With any, it's an engine that creates art schools and societies and museums, if that answers your first question.
Okay, so now I have 3 questions. But following on this, how would you distinguish the Gloucester Art Colony from the Rockport Art Colony? And is there a distinction?
There is. You know, in today's world, the issue of affordable housing, it's not just on Cape Ann, but everywhere. But for artists, it's a very difficult issue on Cape Ann. And yet, it's not the first time that this happened, all right? In the 1890s, as Pigeon Cove was the mecca for art, for the affluent, they were rebuilding their cottages into what we would consider to be McMansions. And at the turn of the century, as people are now, again, because of this looking at the coastal region as an area of artistic inspiration, the artists need to find somewhere to live. And Pigeon Cove was too expensive. And fish shacks on Bearskin Neck in 1900 could be rented for $5 for the year because nobody cared about them. And that permitted art to come into Rockport in a way that really was very different than the art coming into Gloucester. Gloucester was a city, right? It had the whole political structure of a city. Rockport was a town. When the Art Association buys the tavern in 1929, the newspapers say, we, the town of Rockport, embrace our art gallery. They considered it and the people in it to be part of the town. In 1929, the Art Association produces an artist map of galleries, and there are almost 90 galleries in Rockport at that time, all ID'd as to the streets that they were on. So it was a vital heartbeat of Rockport that, you know, there was a great schism in Gloucester between the North Shore Arts and the Gloucester Arts Group, with the Gloucester Arts Group saying, we don't jury, we don't give prizes, all these different attitudes. Rockport initially, and it's part of what the book shows, is that it was all together and then it kind of spread apart. And the town said, wait a minute, you know, this is not what we want going on here. You know.
It's really interesting. Okay, my third question is, can you name for us, or will you please name for us, just a couple of those important works that were sent out to critics, the important works that the Rockport Association really prizes?
Yeah, so let's see what went out. The Child Hassan painting from the Rockport Art Association. A couple of Timis went out. One of the biggest contributions was given by Gary Ward from the Museum of Fine Arts. He wrote 8 essays on the sculptures of Richard Recchia. And it's really interesting because different people had different levels of passion in writing. You know, they all kind of wanted to give a bio of the artist, which you had to kind of look at, and then they got to the work itself. Stowe Wengenroth went out to, I'm forgetting the name of the man from Historic New England, who, you know, everyone picked the one that they really loved. Okay, to work on.
Yeah, he's a favorite, Wengenroth.
By far, the greatest woman represented was, of course, Margaret Stuber Pearson. There are 3 essays written on her life and her works.
Beautiful.
Including, Greg Cook writes this article called The Staircase to Nowhere. And in many of Margaret's paintings, there's this incredible staircase that people are on. Well, Marguerite was in a wheelchair from very early on, from 16 on. And when she built her house in Marmion Way, she had a staircase that went up to a storage room. And the purpose of the staircase was, it was a theatrical prop. Now, one of the neat things is we actually have the architectural plans for a house. And so we actually have the drawing for the staircase. Lots of really, you know, ultimately the excitement of this for me is that it really restores the resilience of this organization over time.
Well, and where can we purchase the book?
So it's available at the Rockport Art Association gift shop now for $39.95, and I think you can buy it online as well. That you'd have to check on their website to see in it.
Great.
Do you have any events centered around the release of the book, Les, at all? You through the Art Association or on your own?
Too late on unless you dig down into the ground. On the 24th was the burial of the time capsule, and remarks by Ted Tarr, Senator Tarr. One of the neat things is that you know, it was the pandemic, right? So our meeting remotely was a necessity. Local newspapers were not available. Having access to Sandy Bay as I do, I was able to go in and find paintings and objects that appear in the book, some for the first time. You know, and that was very exciting to be able to do that. So that's that event. There will be a talk that Jim Craig and I, Jim's the executive director that I worked with, we'll be giving a talk sometime in the fall, I think, under the auspices of the Sandy Bay Historical Society on the book. You know, one of the nifty things is the oldest thing to go into the time capsule is something from Sandy Bay. And there were two early artists that came to Rockport. Gilbert Tucker Margison comes in 1883 from Nova Scotia in his 20s. There are no art schools. Parker Perkins, born in Lowell, Mass in 1860, follows on his heels, both self-taught. Parker Perkins became one of the foremost painters of seascapes in the United States, very soft-spoken, not that well known. So in the time capsule went a sketch by him from 1883 when he's 23 years old of like over in Pigeon Cove.
Mm.
Wow.
I want to, let's see, I can't bring it up. Can I do a share screen or not? No, it's a background, excuse me. It's a painting by Gilbert Tucker Margison, all right? Let me bring this up for you because it's—
For those watching outside of the area, it's been a very rainy summer here in Cape Ann, but that is actually not ice behind Les. We want to just get that out of the way now.
That's quarry wall. Okay, here it is. Now, I need to get out of the way. This is bearskin neck. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I can do it this way. All right. So this is bearskin neck in the early 1890s, painted by Gilbert Tucker Margison. And the point of it is the man on the left, as you're looking at it, is stopped and is looking at you, the painter, as you're looking at him. Okay? And I find it amazing because it shows that, you know, the early artists really were interrupting what was a daily life. And they're saying, well, who are you? What are you looking at me for? What are you here for? You know, I'm coming back in. So that was one of the great finds.
Very cool.
Those are
The
beautiful.
fourth wall.
It was really cool.
And what was the date again on that, Les?
Early 1890s.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's a painting that has, you know, it's at Sandy Bay. It really hasn't been seen before. Gilbert Tucker Margison became one of the foremost painters of ships under sail.
Mm.
And he, when the association forms in 1921, he was the oldest member. For those who live on Cape Ann, if you know Denmar Nursing Home, it was named for George Dennison and Gilbert Tucker Margison. And he actually spent his last 3 years at Denmar. Okay?
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things too is it's in looking through the archives, both at Sandy Bay and at Rockport Art Association. You know, the Art Association published artist books quite regularly. It's the first one that really is the bellwether. It was published in 1940, all right? Now, 1940, we're on the verge. The World War II is rumbling in the background. It's the 100th anniversary of Rockport's founding. The Art Association has gone from this total embrace by the town. You know, it's our gallery, it's our art center, it's our pride, right? The artist balls roll out from the Art Association. Each year, they become bigger, noisier, fewer clothing on the women as it goes along. You know, it was a scandalous competition between the RAA, Gloucester, and Provincetown as to who could wear the least. And by 1937, the WPA had done this writing program for every state to publish a guide of how to get to where you were going to go. And they did that for the Artist Ball in 1937. The Art Association here says, we're going to stop right now. And one of the reasons he stopped was a pressure from the selectmen saying, we have too many people coming who aren't wearing clothes from off Cape Ann. We don't want this. And they invoked the blue laws on the artist. All of which is in the book. They say, you know what? You can't be open on Sundays.
I was gonna say, you can't paint on Sundays?
Open on Sundays because you're turning bearskin neck into a honky tonk. It was like vicious. So on the heels of that, in 1940 comes the first, and there were local newspapers in the 30s where the artists are writing columns on the importance of art. Oh, you know, they're marketing themselves. 1940, they write the book, and I want to read in my preface the one sentence from the introduction. So this is from the preface. In 1940, the artists of the RAA took it upon themselves to publish their first Artist of the Rockport Association book. Writing in her acknowledgement, Ruth Langland Holberg declares, the idea was to make a picture book of their members, which would bring them and their work before the public in a dignified way, and which might serve also as an added source of revenue for the organization itself. How then dignity in the throes of the 2020-2021 pandemic?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The last time I heard Ruth Holberg's name, it was attached to her blueberry cake recipe.
Okay, well, there you go. And, you know, I've always loved that book from the 1940s because every artist in it, it's like this, the artist front and center and maybe a fireplace behind them and a little bit of their studio or their work. And over time, that erodes. You know, in 2006, I did the artist directory where the artist is really tiny down at the bottom with a big piece of the work, okay? And so this book, what I did was a series of breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel, leaving a way through these various stories and anecdotes to suggest a different way of the artist, how artists can present themselves. Because, you know, those founders were giants. I describe in the book, I said, if you think of motif number one as a casino, Hibbard was glad-handing out front, always looking for an opportunity to make something happen. Jimmy was at the craps table and every dice he rolled came up motif number one. He just painted with his eyes closed and he could sell it. And there's an article we have where says, you know, it's gold for me, and those who object to selling art for money don't know how to paint. You know, so these were people who didn't mince words. And yet it comes to this curious moment with the photographers where it's like bear break on bear break. Both sides come with ignorance. There's a lot of acrimony that comes in. It's only within the past year or so that photographers become full members. You know, but it also again shows the resilience. One of the great heroines of the association is Anne Fisk. People know her as a painter. What I show is that from 1950 to 1957, before she joins the Art Association, she photographs Rockport. In every way imaginable, under every rock, under every birth certificate, death certificate, marriage, and exhibitions at the RAA, motif number one day, she's photographing. I'm convinced that her father, Ted, said, you know, you want to become a painter, you want to really do it, go out and learn Rockport first. And one of the great connections is Anne Fisk photographed the Society of Modern Painters that the RAA wanted nothing to do with, photographed them at Redmen's Hall, which is now Campton's Bounty, an exhibit. And it so happens that one of her photographs was of a man who later became an RAA member. So the times move on, right? Things change as they go on.
Well, it sounds like a fascinating book. I am going to drive right down to the Rockport Art Association
You should.
and purchase my copy.
You should.
Yeah. And
Well, it's always great catching up to you. What's the next project now? Because you always have 20 balls juggling in the air.
Yeah. There is this, you know, as you know, I did a series of talks on Dogtown in the spring.
Yeah, they were great.
The book Lost Vistas is on my mind. I've been able to document that there are artifacts in Dogtown that show indigenous people lived there before anybody came to Gloucester. So that puts it at a whole different level of interest. That's probably one of the next big projects. I kind of feel like it would be great to come to you and say, I've got no projects left, but that's a big one. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you so much, Les. It's always so great to talk to you.
Bye for now.
Take care. Stay warm.